Like whenever I'm off time or like instead of watching YouTube tutorials, I watch YouTube tutorials on mixing. I'm sorry.
Didn't you go to Berklee? No.
This is Jackson. Welcome to my demo. Hit subscribe up in the right-hand corner.
Actually, we're gonna take
use
that bit.
Yeah. Welcome to JFTR Live. Today we have a great panel of engineers to really just talk about the philosophy of record making, specifically record making from top to bottom. The main question to kind of get this going is when an artist comes to you or a producer or management and they want you to be in charge of a whole record, what's sort of the first thoughts going through your head as far as like your approach? Eva?
Well, I'm always very honored when somebody asks that. If they're asking me to produce something or record something or mix something, I would say my philosophy is just kind of try to immerse myself in whatever their vibe or their style is. Get really familiar with what they do. So like maybe watch their live shows, listen to their previous records, etc. It's always kind of fun because usually they're trying to do a departure from what they've done previously. So having that conversation is always, to me, very, very important to kind of see like how far I can take it, how much input they want from me. 'Cause sometimes people don't really want that much input. It's like, I've already got the beats made and you're more of like just like a workhorse to like hash out the vision technically. When it's like you have more of a say, especially when it comes to mixing, that's always really fun. But the philosophy is kind of like they can take the reins unless they ask for more of an opinion. And then in that sense, like I said, it's just all about thinking about how we can push their vision even further and, you know, from what they've already done. So.
Gotcha. Gary?
I talk in this?
Yeah.
No. Exactly as Eva said, philosophy is more about communication, understanding what the artist is trying to do. You don't usually have the luxury to talk to the artist that much, because most of the times the way it happens with me is just the producer will message me saying, hey, are you available for this? And they'll just say the artist's name, and then the next date is just me showing up at the session to record stuff. But sometimes I get lucky enough to be able to talk to them and just figure out what they're trying to do. Luckily, I've been involved in more pop and hip hop productions, so my sound palette is expanding in terms of just that genre a bit more. So I just find more ways that I can present to them in terms of what we can do. But that's basically that. Like as much communication as you can have beforehand in terms of what they want to do is basically what helps.
Yeah, I agree with both of y'all. For me, it's also like I try to spend a lot of time in the beginning figuring out how comfortable the artist is at the time that they approach me, how much are they able to be themselves when we start working, and often they're not. So it takes some time to get them comfortable, have them like really know that they can express whatever they need to express, that they can explore stuff, because sometimes people come in with a specific idea of what they think they want to do, and it ends up not being what they really want to do at all. So like trying to figure that out takes time. For me personally, always to like make them comfortable and have some shots or some coffee.
Never hurts.
Yeah. I guess that's a big thing too, is that like if a producer's coming to you, you know, I think for you more, it's like David Phelps, who is a good friend of the studios. Like you guys have a really good working relationship that when he comes to you, the communication is already almost half done with the artist per se, because it's like David's coming to you, you guys know what you can do and elaborate from there essentially, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of like precedent for us finding cool shit when we just experiment and go crazy on something, almost forgetting about the end result that we're trying to do in the moment and just really fucking around. That's when often the coolest shit happens, I think.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
But that takes comfort. Like he knows that let's go crazy in this direction. We ultimately gonna come back to whatever a final result might be, but it could be, completely wild for like a whole day and nothing makes sense or seemingly makes sense. Everything sounds fucking crazy, but that's where the cool stuff happens, I think.
I would say, yeah, Gary, I know we've talked a lot about like your experimentation with like even other pieces of equipment that people don't normally use to like just try and spread that palette a little bit.
Right.
Are you just always looking for something that's going to tweak it just slightly, or is it whatever comes to you almost?
It's very improv based, if I'm being honest, but I spend a lot of time on reverb.com. It's a problem now, I think. You basically, like, as you go and work at studios and you get to experiment on different things, you kind of start understanding like what a transformer-based preamp would sound like, what a tube-based preamp would sound like. You start making these references in your head of what is good. And then when you listen to something and you compare it with your definition of good, you find what it's lacking. And then you realize, okay, this much difference can be brought out by a tube, or this much difference can be brought out by a transformer if it's driven or something like that. And then at the end of the day, when you're at Reverb, just browsing through stuff, you're like, okay, this preamp has these many tubes in it, this kind of circuitry, it'll probably give this. If you're lucky, you'll find someone doing a demo of that piece of gear.
Mm-hmm. Or you're lucky and that piece of gear is only like $30. So.
Exactly, yeah. So like you just listen to all of those things, and then if it's the right situation, if you think that the artist is open or has enough patience for you to mess around with this, you go ahead and do that, and hopefully it ends up being cool.
Yeah.
And if it isn't, then it isn't.
I guess that's the big thing, right? Is like, how do you continue to develop your craft that you're always doing the lift, right? Like we talk about that all the time. Like Eva, like you work on a variety of different mediums as well. Mm-hmm. Like what allows you to keep making that lift? Is it just a Rolodex of information in your head? Is it...
I visually like to think of places when I'm listening to records. Mm-hmm. So like there's a record I worked on, which is very interesting. It's like world music. And they kind of wanted this album to be like a story. So it was fun. There was like one thing, it's like just a violin playing in the beginning. It's a fiddle. Just like a fiddle playing, and I think then an accordion comes in. And I was like, you know what? Like, if we were gonna turn this into a story, we should pretend they're somewhere else. So in that case, you know, I like was looking up like Dungeons and Dragons, like background music that people like listen to and like playing Dungeons and Dragons. And I put like an old timey like village sound. So it and like put some footsteps in there. So it sounded like the person was like walking through a village playing. And then, you know, same like even this other record I just worked on, it's like bluegrass. And I was thinking of this venue called First Avenue, which is Prince's old venue in Minneapolis, very famous place. But it's like I was like picturing when I was mixing being there, because I've heard other bluegrass bands there, and it's the energy in that venue is always so high. Normally bluegrass is very kind of like in your face. It's like pretty raw and pretty organic, and they knew my sound was a departure from that, because I've heard other things I've mixed, which are a lot bigger, you know, and more wide. So I did that with it. And so when someone comes to you specifically for your sound, for your vision, and people do that with me a lot when they're just like want some weird shit.
That's the dream, when people hit you up to say, do you, like, go crazy.
I mean, it's an honor, you know, because like when you feel like a complete whack job half the time, it's like, all right, cool, you know, it's like, let's go, you know, and when they really love it and when they're really like, what a cool vision, what a cool idea, it's always like very validating.
It's nice when like I'll do a mix sometimes and like they'll give me free reign and the notes I get back are like pretty small. They're just like, all right, you went a little far here. Like that was a little much, but like honestly, like 99% of it's good. It's literally just like, let's change this verb slightly. Let's dial this back a little bit. And it's just like, all right, cool, awesome. You know, that's awesome. That's a great feeling for sure.
Yeah.
I guess that's the thing is like some of my favorite producers and engineers, I feel like they start to develop like a signature sound, right? Like kind of 9 times out of 10, I think I can know when like a Chad Blake has mixed a record. Is that something you feel like is developing for you guys as you work on these kind of like larger projects?
Yeah, I feel like I'm going back and forth on it, to be honest. I haven't really decided if that's something desirable for me or not. I really enjoy working on a bunch of different genres, different styles. I think there's definitely like an imprint that you develop over time that's like a quality standard. But I don't think I would want people to listen to something and know that, oh, that's something he did. And it's more, I want this to be like one of the best things that artist put out, ideally. So I want them to hear the artist and not necessarily my shit. If that makes
Chris
sense.
Lord-Alge,
You don't want the record to have the German engineering touch.
The German producer tag.
Yeah, but for me, I think I gravitate towards the same tools because I know what they do. So I would go for our compressor to like, add some pump to the vocal, or like I'll have 1176 to just do the peaks. But when I use it is obviously dependent on the source that I get. So I don't know if I'm making a signature sound for myself, but I do know that I end up using similar tools for similar things on a bunch of tracks. So yes and no, maybe.
I guess the thing that probably will happen, right, is eventually you have a mix come out or a record that you're working on come out that does well. And so somebody comes to you and goes, make it sound like this record. And theoretically, that is sort of how a sound starts to develop, maybe. Like, because it's like I know you worked on the boygenius record, but like you listen to that record, it also like has those hints of what Phoebe has already done in the past, right? But if someone comes to you and goes, can you make this record sound like this? It's like
you can't, because it's like it's boygenius is boygenius, Kevin Abstract is Kevin Abstract. So you can try and process them similarly. It might work or it might not work. But like if you have to push a vocal back into the mix and you always use a Fairchild to do that, somebody might not do it. Somebody might use just an EQ to push the vocals back, or might just use a fader to push it back. And that's how they always do those things.
I guess my thing is too is that like I get decision fatigue sometimes with how many tools we have available to us.
Totally.
And so I try really hard to like stick to like the same 20 or so plugins for everything. And if I find something new, then I try to like drop something off and replace it. Yeah. Do you guys find any of like there's new tools that you're like, okay, Fairchild I'll never use again, or I'll never use an Altaverb again or something, like is there any tools that are just like popping up that you're like, oh my gosh, this has changed my next steps?
I mean, for me, like, and mixing, clarity is very important, and not even clarity and is like shimmery, shiny. It's just when people listen to my mixes, sometimes they're like, wow, we can really hear everything, which I think that's kind of like what a good mix is. It's like not necessarily hearing everything, but feeling everything. So I'm always like kind of looking for new things that may dull something, but also still make it stand out. Like Decapitator is like famous for that. It's like it barely even adds anything, but it's like you can hear the difference. Obviously, when it's on, you can make it a little darker, a little lighter. I mean, I feel like I'm always looking for tools like that. Like Tube, I think it's called Tube, is like a good Hertz, saturator that like I discovered recently. It's cool because there's EQ curves, like things like that. Basic toolbox plugins will always remain very important to me, but things that can like add some transients or add some of that with also being able to control it and take it back to make it sit, like the BX saturator. There's a lot of things like that that I like, and I'm always hunting for. Because Decapitator at this point, it's kind of like when now I'm kind of like growing past it. Like, there's more inventive ways to do this, and there's more interesting things we can do to use
Well, it was a big thing because Isotope like re-released, what was it, Trash,
yeah.
Recently, and it's just like, but they're like, oh, we have all these other distortion algorithm and stuff, and it's like, all right, well, like, yeah, I'm gonna try not use Decapitator as much. I'm gonna try and use
like exciters and stuff. They can go tape, retro, whatever, all those different options.
It keeps changing and updating. Like I used to use a lot of like SPL Iron for my master bus stuff.
Yeah.
And now I'm back on Fairchild, and I'm now slowly going into like using a Fatso on a master bus. So it's just like when you read the manual and you watch some video online and you like something clicks, and then you start using that for some time, that sounds appeals to you, and then sometimes it doesn't, and then you move to something else and then you start using that. So it keeps evolving. It's basically what you're trying to look for. And if the plugin is giving you that in the quickest way possible, basically.
I guess that's the thing, right, is like also how to instill that energy into even the people that are working for you, right? Because like I'll read a manual, I'll watch videos. I mean, I was just a couple days ago, I was tuning something in Melodyne that had like a really aggressive vocal fry, and I was just like, felt like I was going insane. I was like, I have to be able to do this. And then I went down this whole rabbit hole where I found this guy who's like tuning growl metal vocals in Melodyne.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, and it worked?
It still was like, it got me closer, but it was just
I gave up. Like, he played that to me, and I was like, I don't know what the fuck.
It worked a little bit, yeah. And I think it's just, how do we, I'm trying to figure out like what sparks the interest in like opening the manual? What sparks the interest in watching the video, right?
I never do that.
You never do?
I'm sure you've done it at some point, or at least everyone has a different process on like figuring these things out. I think it's like
I don't know. Are you just a trial by error kind of?
Bro.
But there's also like reverse engineering a fucking plugin like that, right? You probably, if you don't read the manual on anything, like I don't read the manual on everything, but I know I'll push the shit until it breaks.
Yeah.
Just to see what it does. It's always funny to me, these Instagram reels where people say, this is the perfect snare drum EQ, and it's like a 2 dB dip at fucking 400 hertz, and just like this template that doesn't make any fucking sense. But that's the danger of like people having access to a lot of information, some of it being good, some of it not being good. But it really depends what mindset you apply when you try to figure something out, right? Is it let me find a quick fix to do this, or let me really understand how to do this so when this happens again, I know what to do.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like so impatient too. That's my issue. Like I'll put it on, I'll futz with it. And if it's not the situation, I'm like, no.
I'm out of here.
You know, I'm
Turn
not.
it off. Bypassed.
You know, sometimes like Plugin Alliance, it's like you have like 5,000 plugins.
Yeah.
And I'll just like go through and click all of them. And like half of them are not like the plugin I'm looking for. But it's still like sometimes I'll find one that I'm like, oh, what is this doing? All right, I see. Maybe not for this, but maybe for something else.
I see you.
I love reading the manual, man. I like whenever I'm off time or like instead of watching YouTube tutorials, I watch YouTube tutorials on mixing. I'm sorry, but I do.
Didn't you go to Berklee? No.
This is Jackson. Welcome to my demo.
Hey, what's up, YouTube? Welcome to my channel.
Hit subscribe up in the right hand corner.
Actually, we're gonna take
use
that
Yeah.
But no, I do. I love reading manuals, man. It's so much fun because the first time I read a manual on a Waves plugin, it had this thing called Quick Start Guide, and that told me that there are all these plugins, that analog model plugins, are made to specific tolerances or like whatever they were calibrated to. So if I'm seeing a 3 dB gain reduction, like when is that gain reduction happening? What is the vocal actually doing? And that just lets me tailor that plugin. For me, it's my favorite pastime, just reading manuals.
Getting deep into it.
Nerd.
I mean, we're all kind of nerds. We're all nerds. We just hopefully we start making enough money to buy better clothes. Is kind of yeah. I guess that kind of is like, you know, when it comes to making some of these bigger records, do you feel the patience to be able to really go and attack these challenges and feel like you have time to do it, or do you still feel like you're just under the gun and it needs to be done within the next like 5 minutes, you know? Because I feel like when it's like these one-off sessions, it's like I just have to figure this out now. I have to solve this problem right now. I don't have time to figure out the true
manual.
problem. Yeah, I don't have time to look at the manual.
I mean, that's why you read the manuals when you're not working on stuff, basically. But yeah, like that helps when you when you read the manual and then in the moment you're like, oh, these drums are falling flat and I need to make them pop right away so that the vocal can be delivered properly. So you've read the manual, you do your quick thingies that you know already, like they can get you the quick result and whatever, and then you move forward. So it makes it quicker to do all of that stuff.
Yeah, well, because the time crunch thing is always interesting because it's like even some mixes, like there was a mix I was working on and it was like a month-long deadline and all of a sudden it got pushed up by like 2 weeks and it's like, oh, okay, I have to like move quick now. You know, I didn't have the time that I thought I was going to have. And like, so I don't really have as much time to experiment. I kind of have to use the tried and true stuff to get this done in a timely manner because this is what the client is expecting, you know?
Yeah, I try to think of that ahead of time, especially like when we're like score mixing because like we have to work so fast. We have to mix so many things in a day. So it's like if I hear the score ahead of time, I start kind of thinking because everyone has a different flavor, like classical orchestral, aggressive orchestral, like lots of synths, like that kind of stuff. So before I start, I'll kind of maybe start bringing up plugins like that ahead of time and like maybe futz with some things and go, okay, this would maybe be good for this and not. And then oftentimes I'll just like kind of create a little list of a grab bag that like I can maybe grab for that project like quickly. I'll maybe experiment like on the first couple mixes and I'll shoot them off. And if I hear like, oh, the piano's too loud, wait, like I'm not a fan of this sound. I'm like, all right, that was a bad idea. Like we're gonna go this way. And then that sound will carry through. And it's like, okay, that will be my little thing. And then I'll carry those kind of thoughts and that's process to the next mix, depending on whether or not it fits. So
my folders look like all my Pro Tools sessions will be like song name XYZ and then mess around compressors, mess around EQ, mess around do not use, all that kind of stuff. So I mess around with the mixes to my heart's content.
Manual pass.
Exactly. And then at the end, it's like just one session that has all of those elements in it. That just ends up being the mix.
That's really cool. So what's like the compressor mess around session looking like? Do you just throw different compressors on the same shit, or?
Yeah, sometimes like I have this romantic idea in my head that if I use channel strip plugins on all the channels, I will get a different sound.
Yeah.
So I limit myself to just the SSL channel strips or the Neve channel strips, and I'm just using those EQs, just using those compressors. And it gives me a different mix altogether. I'm like automating the faders and everything else. And it's really cool. But again, it's not hitting the same way because the SSL channel strip cannot sound like the 1176 or something.
Right.
So you do that, and then there will be another pass where I'm just using the API EQs and nothing else. It's boring and nerdy stuff, but I love it. I don't have anything better to do.
I think that's great.
So I do all of that, and then the last session would just be like, okay, this electric guitar sounds really great with the API EQ, so I'll use that.
So you just session import from the different mess around sessions, or?
Sometimes I just have that idea that, okay, like 7K boost on this works, but I need it to be controlled, so I'll use those elements and then develop that final session.
Do you have friends?
No, no, I don't.
We're your friends.
We'll
Garry.
be your friends.
Yeah.
No. I think all my friends are exactly the same way as I am. Like we talk for hours about just this kind of stuff. Like, oh my God, like we did this and it did that, and like I use it for this, and like my friend's wife has this term called TMM, too much music. So whenever we're talking, she just like shouts TMM.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Can we talk about politics for once?
And when there is a different subject, we're like, yeah, great, good.
How about this compressor?
Yeah.
It's fun, man. All like nerdy talk. I love all of that.
How does it feel to adapt though between genres then? I feel like all of us here at the table, but especially the three of you here, like you have jumped between the different genres that sometimes it's like, rock and orchestral and hip hop and R&B and, experimental R&B. Like it's all just
managing expectations. I think in my head, I always want the kick drum to hit me in the chest. But for a jazz track, like artists wouldn't like it.
No.
I would want it to be, but the artist wouldn't like it. So what does this thing actually need rather than what you want it to be?
It's tough sometimes, but yeah, I agree. There's certain things that we prefer, and yeah, I would probably want to do the same thing, like especially with the kick drum, but yeah, it might not always be the vibe.
Like I'm like sample replacing kick drum on a jazz record, and then like it sounds awesome. It's a huge kick drum.
It's the loudest thing on the record.
And there's like the swing happening, and then there's this like huge kick hitting you every time. Like no.
Yeah, it's hard. Like I struggle with it. And that's like when I have to go to pop, it's like I will oftentimes just give the mix to someone else. Like I really will. It's like my mixes are so dynamic, like, or, this kind of stuff. It's a lot of automation. It's like lifting it up in the moments, bringing it down in the moments it shouldn't be. Whereas a pop record, it is like, I just was mixing for this artist and she was like, yeah, like, it's really dynamic, but like, this is a pop record. And I was like, right. So I had to got it. So I had to call my friend who's like, oh yeah, here you go. Like limiter on the master bus. And I'm like, this mix is square. I'm like, it's literally square, which is what the demo was. So it's like, I was like, you know what? Fine. Like I'm going for it. Let's do it. So like, it's difficult for me. It's like, especially because I have settled now so into my lane that like doing that for me can be really difficult. It'll take me like 2 days to settle in to a new mix, and I'll push and pull, and it develops, and I feel like I get more comfortable, the more days I work on it and stuff. But I don't. It's rough.
But it's awesome that you said that you would give the mix to someone else, and that's really good to know that this is what you are doing and this is what you will be comfortable doing with. For me, I end up in a worse situation because I ask myself why I can't do this. Mm-hmm. And then that becomes an issue for me and I cannot sleep. Because like, why does my jazz record sound like a pop record? Like, why don't I like the regular kick drum that is in there, and why cannot I make it work? that just keeps me up at night. So it's good to know what you want to do and what you're trying to do, rather than just trying to do everything.
I think you can have an appreciation for a genre, but not have the, I don't want to say not have the skills, but not have the,
Maybe not the feel for it.
not the
right?
feel for it,
Yeah.
right? Like, and like that's how I feel sometimes about trap music. Like, I'm not a trap guy. Like, I appreciate it. Like, there's some really great artists out there, but like, there's other people that are better at it than me. And like, a lot of these artists are spending money from their own pocket, right?
Right.
And so, who am I to take their money and like give them a subpar record?
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's the thing when we're talking about deadlines. Like when we're talking about how much time you have to spend on something, it's like if I know that like it's gonna take me multiple days and like 20 car listens just to get something in a spot that's like, okay, now I can send this to them. Now I'm wasting my money because like I'm not making a lot of money to be spending forever on this. When I know there's someone who could literally spend like 4 hours on it and just like, there, it's done. That's tough to say because like people will listen to your work and they'll like it and they'll go, I want your sound on what I'm doing. It's like, I get that you want my sound. I get that I'm talented, but like,
Thank you.
this is gonna be shitty. Like, it's gonna be shit. Like, I'm sorry. Like, it's just not what I'm gonna be. I'm not gonna be able to do it well. So,
But for mixing in particular, it also does depend what the session or like what the source material sounds like, right? Sometimes it's hard to connect to something from a rough mix, and you might connect to the material more once you have it in a session. You actually start touching stuff and moving stuff around. But yeah, that decision to recognize I don't connect with this, someone else does it, I think that's genius. That's great.
Bro, I end up in a depressive state, man. I just don't know what to do with this song, but I am the one who has to do it.
Well, it's hard because I think we, as engineers, like we kind of have to have an ego about it a little bit, right? Like I know what I'm doing. I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
People are trusting you with their art, right? So they need somebody who's like, I got you, versus, oh, I got you, even blindly. I have you.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it's like,
No, I think if I know beforehand that this is not in my wheelhouse, I never say no, but I let the artist know that, hey, like I will try my best. This might not work, but this is the situation. Yeah, let's try. And with that sense, I think they already start looking for someone who might do a better job than you. And you're a bit more freer because then you can do what comes to your mind. And then if it doesn't connect with them, it doesn't connect with them. But you've already made sure that they know that this is not in your wheelhouse. And you end up learning something new. Like when you work on this, you have your version and then somebody else does it and then you listen to their version and then you see what connected. And then again, you update your reference in terms of what does and what doesn't.
yeah. And it's not like always ego smashing because it's like I have friends who are like, could never literally do what you do. Can get the best drum sounds ever.
Right.
Can mix this kind of record amazingly. If I ever had to sit down and do what you do, I would have no idea where to start. So it's always like, I'm not bad at what I do. I just like, sometimes it's like, I just can't, I don't know what I'm doing.
It just comes down to like what kind of exposure you've had
Yeah.
when you've been working for this long. Like I wouldn't be able to mix scores. I will do something, but it wouldn't be a professional sounding, good sounding score because a score mixer does their own thing and I am...
They just think about it so much differently.
Exactly. It's the thought
And also the
process.
time you put into getting really good at that one specific thing.
Right.
Right. Yeah, I could never do what you do. Would get fired on the first day.
No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. No, I doubt that.
Well, I've seen, you know, even I've seen you work on like even just like a little S1, and I'm like, I use an S1 for some faders and to do some like little automation here and there. But like anytime you come and mix at the studio, it's like I bring it out and you're like, rip, and I'm like, what is happening right now? I mean, I knew you could do it, but like, I mean, it just some people, you know, you work with some people and they make it seem so. It's not even an ease; it's a breeze, right?
Effortless.
Yeah,
It's
their
effortless.
skill is just like I said, like people with drums, I'll watch other mixers, and it's just like it's they're opening up compressors and listen. Look, what's the song BPM? Cool. Like what's the key of the song? Great. I'm grabbing that freak. I'm like, what are you? I'm sitting here like watching, and they've got like 3 compressors, and they're like this to that, fast attack, slow attack, this, and I'm just like, no, never. You know what I mean? Stuff like that you watch people do, and you're just like, where did you even learn that? You know? And I think it just comes down to experience and different people's bags, and it's. I mean, everybody has incredible talent, and they'd fuck up something that they don't normally do.
Yep.
We all would probably, and I'll do sometimes. So yeah.
I definitely remember like my early mixes versus where I am now. I remember there were times when I'd be like, oh, I got to turn up the drums, and I would turn up the drums, but then they'd sound like they were getting squished because I had a drum bus with a really heavy compressor, and like, you know, there's just this mindset of just like, oh, I'll just turn it up, and it's like, no, I'm turning up more into this compressor that now is reacting, getting slammed, and I'm just like, oh, that wasn't the move, right? And it's like, got to make some mistakes to.
It's a fine art. I still do that.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing too. Is like, are there challenges that like really stand out to you as like, oh, I got over this hill and like I am now better for it? Like for me, like again, it's definitely like tracking drums in my time. Like, you know, I went from not really understanding phase at one point, and now I get it. Now I understand it, and I feel pretty good about tracking drums, you know. But I had to like get a few people come back to me and be like, "This is not good for me."
Dude, I'm still going through my imposter syndrome phase.
Yeah, same.
I'm still not over that. Like I'm in the studio recording someone, and I'm thinking to myself, do you even know what you're doing, bro?
Every day. It's funny. I always have like some time where I'm like, I'm the shit. Like, yeah, I know exactly what I'm doing. I walk in, I hear everything. And then there's sometimes I walk in and I just call it plateau moments, where it's like every day I walk in and I know I'm doing everything like I usually do, but I don't know what I'm hearing anymore. It's like, am I good? I don't think I'm good. And then I always hit this level up where whether it's like a little change in technique or maybe not, it's just like one day I come in and I'm like, now I get it. Like I get it. Like I just glue, like it was a glow up basically.
Yeah.
I feel like imposter syndrome will always be a thing. I know it's even a thing with like the biggest mixers, biggest artists. Like we all deal with that. Like believing in our own success is just such a hard thing to do, I think, for everybody. You know, right now I'm actually in one of those moments where I'm just kind of like, I don't really know, but I feel like I'm on the edge. And one time I was like that, and then I heard something get released, and I was like, oh my God, this is incredible.
I'm the best.
I was like, this is freaking great. And I was like, all right. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't stop, because I think those moments is what makes us all kind of really be like, all right, I'm gonna open the manual, you know?
Yeah, you gotta do that or have that mindset to get better, right? It sucks if there's days where we beat down on ourselves or feel like we don't know what the fuck we're doing. But those are the moments where you're like, I want to feel like I know what the fuck I'm doing, so let me go figure it out and just dig deep on it.
Well, especially when you are in a slump. When you're in a mental slump, it's like trying to pick your tried and true route to get yourself out of the slump, right? Because there are so many resources that it's like YouTube, manual. Sometimes it's as easy as just going and getting dinner with a friend.
Or take a break. Like that should really help.
Just taking a break and like,
and it's the worst when it happens mid-session, when it's like, okay, the vocal takes are done, you've recorded all the ad-libs and everything else, and now the producer says, yo, you know what to do. I'm like, yes.
What do you mean I know what to do?
And then you go in and then you listen, you spend some time, and then you haven't even begun to make any moves, and then they come back and say, oh, this is great, let's move forward.
Yeah.
I know, I hate that. I hate I could improve it. And it's like, I've been told this a million times. I'm like, I don't think it's that good. And they're like, did they like it? Yes, then move on. And it's like, okay.
That's tricky, where the client's standard is obviously the most important one, or like their opinion matters the most, but it's really heartbreaking.
But if their standard is, you know, Taco Bell versus, you know, Chipotle.
Don't talk shit about Taco Bell. No, but like for me, the worst thing is that you're the one who recorded the vocals and ad-libs, and now you are the one who is in a slump that you cannot make it better. Like that happens with me a lot. It's scary that I'm in that position, but it happens every day. And slowly, I'm getting better at it.
I saw something recently online that was just like, if you have imposter syndrome, like, then you must know you're good enough to feel like an imposter. Because there's people out there who don't have imposter syndrome, and it's like, and they're just like living their life. But it's like for us, because I think we have a standard we're trying to shoot for. We have our favorite records that we grew up listening to, that like, that's what we're trying to do.
That's like the quote, the more you know how much you don't know. If you're really good at something, it's really easy to identify any potential flaws. Someone else who might not do what you're doing, like some of the clients, it might be really fucking good, but for your standards, like, I can do this even better.
Yeah, it was like, after I did that, I did like a thing at NAMM this year. I like played back some of the Atmos mixes, and at the end of it, I went out to like get some food with my friends, and they were like, the one thing you really need to work on is like not being so self-derogatory. Even my mom is like, I watched it, and you can't like talk yourself down. I'm like, well, I don't know. It's how I feel. Like I do think it could have been a little bit better. It's a struggle because especially at a certain level, it's like you can't walk in saying like you can joke around and be like maybe play a great mix and it's amazing. You're like, oh, I just don't know what I'm doing, and then they're like, haha, that's not true. But if they like walk in and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, there's certain clients that are gonna be like what,
That's what I was saying earlier, like about the ego. Like you have to have a certain amount of ego.
You do.
To like for someone to trust you. But if it's too far, then you're just a jerk. And like if you're a jerk, you may be the greatest mixer, but like again, a lot of people are paying for their own money. Like, do they want to spend a month with you or a month with me? Mm-hmm. And most of the time it's me. I hope.
I definitely overdo this. Every time I'm in a session, I begin with saying like, hey, I'm really bad at this.
You can do that because you're a guy. I can't do that because I'm a woman. So they already don't think I know anything.
You, a lady?
And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. And they're like, you don't. And I'm like, no, it's okay. I kind of do.
It's crazy because like you're right when like I've seen this happen like with my eyes. Like I say that I'm bad and people are like, no, you'll figure it out. And then somebody else would say like, I'm bad. And they're like, all right, then we'll have someone else.
Yeah.
It's just not the
Also,
same.
the resume matters, right? Like someone like you guys saying I'm bad doesn't really add up with the work you put out. So it's clearly not.
It depends on the day.
Not
Depends
true.
on the day.
Well, I guess I have no other questions at the moment. Got anything else?
Not really, to be honest. I think we covered a lot of stuff, right? Do you have anything you guys want to talk about?
I'm really bad at this. Do not hire me for audio engineer.
Thank you guys so much for joining us for this JFTR episode. Please like and subscribe, and talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Bye.
Peace.
Huzzah!